I welcome Dr. Rajaram, Director of Atma Hospital, to honor our chairperson, Dr. Shiva Ilangu. Thank you, sir. Now we will move on to the next session for free paper presentation. The session will be chaired by Dr. Ramya Sambat. Welcome to the dais, ma'am. A psychiatric with over more than 9 years of experience in the field of psychiatry. She is a consultant psychiatrist with dynamic and empathetic listening skill. She has worked in diverse subspecialties like psychogeriatric, neuropsychiatry. Dr. Ramya brings in holistic approach to patient care. She has presented various papers at regional national conferences. She has received Best Presentation Award. Her services is psychological problems, psychotherapy, adult, ADHD, depression, and schizophrenia treatment. Welcome to the dais, ma'am. I welcome Dr. Rajaram, Director of Atma Hospitals, to honor our chairperson, Dr. Ramya Sambat.
Anusha ma'am? Anusha ma'am? Anusha ma'am, can you hear me? Your microphone is mute.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, you are the first speaker, ma'am, today.
Uh,
This session.
okay, my
You are the
my
star.
session.
Yeah, yeah, now we will start now.
Okay,
You are the first speaker.
okay,
Second speaker is ma'am Annie Sangita.
okay.
And third speaker is Dr. Sayani Samantha.
Okay.
Can we start now, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, ma'am, you can share your screen, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah,
just a minute.
sure.
Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Your video is on. Start with video, ma'am.
Okay.
You are presenting with the iPad or?
Laptop.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. You can start with your video, ma'am.
Okay, should I put on my video?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Just a minute. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We are ready.
Now over to the chairperson.
Very good morning to one and all. So, on this occasion, I would like to thank the organizing committee and the management for giving me this opportunity. So, for the next series of pre-paper presentations, we have had like interesting topics upcoming. The first presenter would be Mrs. Anusha Siripurappu. So, she is going to present on the knowledge and attitude regarding modified electroconvulsive therapy among medical interns and postgraduate residents. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Shall I start the presentation now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Good morning. I am Dr. Anusha, final year postgraduate, and the title of
Ma'am,
my
make it
topic is
slideshow, ma'am. Ma'am, please make it
Yeah,
slideshow.
yeah, just a minute. Yeah, yeah. Okay. The title of my topic is Knowledge and Attitude Regarding Modified Electroconvulsive Therapy Among Medical Interns and Postgraduate Residents. Electroconvulsive therapy is a standard psychiatric treatment in which electricity is delivered through, through the skull to induce a therapeutic seizure. First conducted in 1938 by two Italian physicians, Ugo Serliti and Lucio Bini, on patients with schizophrenia, ECT has become the oldest somatic treatment for many psychiatric conditions. Contrary to the negative depiction of ECT, its safety and efficacy has been much improved with modification of various aspects of the technique. There is lack of knowledge about the modified ECT, which is done by the administration of muscle relaxants and general anesthesia. People still believe that patients are given unmodified ECT, which has been completely banned according to the Mental Health Care Act 2017. Despite its proven efficacy in treating many psychiatric illnesses, use of ECT has been under controversy since the beginning, and it still faces negative perceptions and unfavorable attitudes among public and also medical health professionals. The aim of my study is to assess the knowledge and attitude towards modified ECT among medical interns and non-psychiatric postgraduate residents and compare their responses. The objectives are to compare the level of knowledge regarding MECT among interns and residents and to compare the attitude of medical interns and non-psychiatric residents towards MECT. Materials and methods. This is a cross-sectional observational study done in the Department of Psychiatry, NRA Medical College and General Hospital, Guntur, for a duration of about 2 months, and the sample size is 200, which includes 100 medical interns and 100 non-psychiatric postgraduate residents. Medical interns and non-psychiatric residents who gave consent for the study are included, and medical interns and non-psychiatric residents who did not give consent for the study and psychiatric postgraduates are excluded from the study, and ethical clearance is obtained from the ethical committee of the college. Tools of data collection. The participants were asked to fill the modified ECT and knowledge attitude questionnaire, which took around 10 to 15 minutes, and the questionnaire was derived from various Indian articles, which consisted of 30 items based on knowledge and 16 items based on attitude. And the knowledge part of questionnaire was further divided into subheadings related to procedure, informed consent, indications, mechanism of action, and side effects related to MECT. statistical analysis, questionnaire sheets were handed over to the participants, explained, and were asked to write down their answers immediately. Main scores of knowledge and attitude were assessed and compared using Microsoft Excel and online chi-square calculators. Proportions were compared using chi-square test, and a two-sided p less than 0.05 was considered statistically significant. Results: age-wise distribution, the mean age of all interns was around 22.9 and mean age of residents were 26 with standard deviation of 1.7. And gender-wise distribution, both the study groups had similar percentage of participation, 50%. In interns, 47 were male and 53 were female, whereas in resident group, 51 were male and 49 were female. Distribution of respondents according to source of knowledge: internet 30% and movies 25% were the chief sources of MECT among the residents, and psychiatric colleagues were the least common. Psychiatric postings, 53% were the primary source of knowledge among medical interns, and the correlation was found to be statistically significant, where p is less than 0.001. Distribution according to means of score on knowledge items: among interns, mean score of knowledge was 67.86, which is statistically significant when compared to residents, whose mean score of knowledge was 62.36. Distribution according to knowledge, significantly 23% of interns when compared to 11% postgraduates believe that pregnant women can also receive MECT, and 40% residents believe that MECT damages body parts permanently, whereas higher, that is around 76% of residents compared to 46% interns believe that MECT receiving patients develop epilepsy. Distribution according to means of score on attitude items: mean score of positive attitude was 62.7 in interns and 59.5 in residents, and mean score of negative attitude were 28.1 in interns and 21 in residents, and mean score of ambivalent attitude among residents were 18.93 and interns were 8.31. Distribution among attitude in both groups, significantly a higher percentage, which is 79% residents had a positive attitude towards recommending MECT to their relatives if needed, compared to 62% interns. But 67% residents and 50% interns were hesitant to undergo MECT if required for themselves. 66% residents believe that MECT is cruel and should be outlawed. 74% interns and 50% residents were positive that MECT is life-saving. Coming to discussion, in the present study, we found that the primary source of knowledge regarding modified ECT in interns was psychiatric postings, and internet was major source in residents, whereas psychiatric colleagues were least common. Similar results were obtained in study done by Matthews et al. With regards to knowledge, 89% residents believe that MECT is contraindicated in pregnancy, and 76% believe that patients receiving MECT develop epilepsy. Interns had more knowledge related to procedure, indications, and side effects of modified ECT when compared to residents. This may be attributed to the main source of knowledge in interns being psychiatric postings. Despite good knowledge regarding modified ECT, 80% interns and 64% residents believe that MECT is often given as a punishment to violent or aggressive patients, and 66% residents and 60% interns believe that treatment with MECT is cruel and should be outlawed. These findings are consistent with study by Andrade and Rao. 53% interns and 71% residents still harbored a negative view that MECT is painful, which is consistent with study by Saloni et al., where 76% residents believed ECT to be painful. The limitations of my study are the validity and reliability of the questionnaire, which was derived from previous literatures, and the sample is taken from a single setting. Conclusion: interns and residents had some knowledge related to MECT, but they still harbor some misconceptions and negative attitude towards modified ECT. It appears that knowledge or education can produce some changes to students' attitudes regarding modified ECT, and it would be helpful to integrate accurate theory and practical sessions about modified ECT into the undergraduate medical curriculum, which may be helpful in destigmatizing modified ECT among the medical health professionals. This will be helpful in correcting negative misconceptions towards modified ECT in general public, as medical health professionals play a pivotal role in lives of general public. The attitudes of medical health professionals towards modified ECT may be important, since they may serve as the most reliable informant for the people to have a second opinion and play a significant role in shaping perceptions of people regarding modified ECT. These are my references. Thank you.
Very good presentation, Dr. Anusha. So it was very insightful to listen to you and to understand the kind of knowledge attitude gap even among medical professionals like interns and residents and things like that. So a couple of questions I would like to just clarify from your end. So I mean, were there any interventions or any information pamphlet that you distributed after the study when we are able to appreciate that there is so much of knowledge attitude gap, because not many interns are really keen in pursuing like psychiatry posting, or they would not really bother about like understanding the right kind of knowledge. Were there
So
any interventions done?
I have not done any post-study interventions, ma'am, but a few of them in both the residents and intern group, they were like enthusiastic to know the correct responses to the questions related to knowledge.
Okay,
So
okay,
they asked me orally, ma'am, like what were the correct responses, and some of them had come to get the right responses.
okay. So, I mean, I think it's very important to, I mean, make the general public see, even among the medical postgraduates and MBBS students, the kind of knowledge attitude gap is so significant. So, considering the general public who may not have so much of knowledge about the treatment guidelines and practices, there might be even more knowledge attitude gap. So, unless these colleagues or the medical fraternity is having the right kind of knowledge, they cannot impart it to somebody who's coming as a patient. For example, OGISHIan themselves might have a myth that ECT is contraindicated in pregnancy. So only by educating the medical professionals, we are doing the first step to reduce the stigma against modified ECT, which is considered a very safe procedure and a very effective procedure in treatment intolerant cases and in the zera of metabolic syndrome with atypical antipsychotics. Modified ECT can still be a very good option for various reasons. So I think it's a very nice study that you have brought out, and congratulations for that. And maybe you
Thank
can, since it's a cross-sectional study, you can continue it in some regard, like how you can go about like modifying their attitudes or some kind of interventions or something like that, or just extrapolating it to the patients that they see or something like that. If there are any queries, we are happy to take it from the forum.
you. Thank you.
I think your study, your presentation and all that was very clear and simple. So best wishes. So maybe
Thank
you
you.
can continue the study like a small cohort kind of a study where you can do some further interventions and try to have a follow-up of what you have arrived now. Do some intervention and again repeat the same kind of questionnaire and see whether the knowledge attitude gap has reduced and all of that. So that would be worth publishing. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think the next presentation is from Dr. Ani Sangeeta on the clinical profile and comorbidity in children with autism spectrum disorders, a cross-sectional descriptive study. Over to you, Doctor.
Good morning to all. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good morning to one and all. The title of my study is The Clinical Profile and Comorbidities in Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder, a cross-sectional study. Introduction. Autism spectrum disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by deficits in social interaction, communication with restricted, repetitive, and stereotype activities. There are many known etiologies that contribute to autism spectrum disorder phenotype, which includes genetic variation, in utero stressors, premature delivery, NICU admissions, environmental exposure, and many unknown factors. About 1 in 54 children has been identified with autism spectrum disorder, according to the recent publication by CDC, which was published in April 2021. and they also shown male preponderance in a ratio of 4:1. There is a wide range of spectrum severity found for communication and social deficits, and also in restrictive repetitive behaviors and sensory issues. The RRBs range from stereotyped motor movements to atypical reactions and to the sensory issues. The associated psychiatric comorbid conditions like intellectual disability make the clinical picture more complicated, hampering its diagnosis. The commonly co-occurring medical comorbidities like seizure disorder, constipation, poses a great challenge in the treatment protocol. So, a detailed knowledge about the symptom profile of autism spectrum disorder helps in diagnosing the children earlier and to initiate the therapy early. Aims. The aim of my study is to study the clinical profile and the associated comorbidity in children with autism spectrum disorder. The objectives are to study the sociodemographic profile and the clinical profile of autism spectrum disorder children, and to study the associated psychiatric and medical comorbidity in autism spectrum disorder children. The methodology, the study center is it is done in a tertiary care center in the Department of Psychiatry in Chennai. The study period is 2 months and it is a cross-sectional descriptive study. Consecutive sampling method was used. The study sample size is 37. Children who have been diagnosed with diagnosed to have autism spectrum disorder as per DSM criteria, aged above 2 years, after obtaining informed consent from the parents, were included in the study. Tools used are Vineland Social Maturity Scale and Childhood Autism Rating Scale 2. So, statistical analysis was done using SPSS version 23. Results and discussion. In the socio-demographic profile, out of 37 cases of autism spectrum disorder, the mean age of diagnosis was 3.5 years, out of which 30 children were male children with a percentage of 81.1%. In our study also, there is a male preponderance. Most of the primary caregiver, almost all of the primary caregiver were the mother for all the 37 children. And there is a family history of autism spectrum disorder seen in children around 22.2%. Maternal stressors were seen in 44.5% of mothers in the form of marital disharmony and financial constraints. Commonly seen antenatal illnesses were gestational diabetes mellitus and hypothyroidism, of which hypothyroidism was the commonly observed antenatal illness. And there was history of NICU admission in the mothers of autism spectrum children in a percentage of 25%. And the minor physical anomalies were found like frontal bossing, low set ears, hypertelorism, and high arched palate were noticed in 13.6% of children. Coming to the clinical profile, the stereotype movements vary from simple to complex motor movements. Higher number of stereotypes in ASD was seen in younger age with low IQ and greater severity of autism spectrum disorder. Among the deficits in social communication and interaction, lack of eye contact and absence of pointing was observed in most of the children up to 35 children. And there are RRBs. The commonly seen RRBs are motor stereotypes in the form of rocking, jumping, and spinning movements, accounting for 89.2%. The restrictive behavior, like insisting for using same dress, not allowing the parents to trim the nail and to cut the hair, were the commonly observed restrictive behavior in our study. The sensory issues like smelling, licking, adverse response to noise, hand regard were the common responses I have received. So in it, the adverse response to noise, like the adverse response to the commonly heard noise in the day-to-day life, like for cooker sound and mixie sound, were the common responses heard from the mother. And most of the children had hand regard. And about 90% of children diagnosed with ASD will have atypical sensory issues in the form of hypo or hyperreactivity, of which abnormal response to tactile stimulation is very common. Others include heightened sensitivity to noise and touch, finger stimming in front of the eyes. The common psychiatric comorbidity observed in our study is intellectual disability. Totally 9 children were observed to have intellectual disability, and 8 children had global developmental delay. And ADHD was found in two children. Behavioral problems were seen in 3 children. Medical comorbidities like seizures, sleep disturbances, and GA problem were the common medical comorbidity observed in our study. Of which sleep disturbance was present in 15 children. Normally, the commonest psychiatric comorbidity in ASD is ID, and the prevalence is 30%. Epilepsy is a common in ASD children due to alteration in the architecture of cortical neurons and disruption of blood-brain barrier due to neuroinflammation. Sleep problems in ASD are related to the REM sleep with decreased quantity and REM sleep latency. It increases the caregiver stress and kindles the child's behavioral problems. The limitation of my study is very small sample size, and it is a cross-sectional study where we can make out only the association, but not the causal relationship could not be done. A follow-up study would be a better option to know the difference in symptom profile after initiation of therapy, the parents or the caregiver understanding of disease and therapy, and the problems faced by the mothers during the process of therapy can be done with the help of a follow-up study. Conclusion: though the prevalence of ASD has increased in the last decade, diagnosis of ASD is still difficult and challenging because of wide range of symptom presentation. Most of the parents fail to acknowledge the symptoms and consider them as normal, which delays the consultation. Early identification facilitates early intervention, which favors the prognosis. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. It was a nice presentation to just understand the clinical demographic profile and also the kind of markers or characteristics associated with autism spectrum disorders. So, a couple of clarification from your end. Like, when was this study done? What was the period of, when was the study done?
This was done in Institute of Child Health between July and August. July and August is the study.
Of this year, is it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So, like generally, like in this pandemic, post-pandemic era, so there has been a lot of symptoms because children are not, we are not able to send children outside or mingle with other children or to play with other kids of the similar age, which is very important for social skill development. So people are, the children are getting unduly exposed to a lot of social media or something like, mobile game or something, a cartoon or something, to which they are tuned to respond very passively. So this kind of emotional reciprocity, which is important in autism spectrum or social skill development adaptation, is generally very delayed in this pandemic era. So were there any elements in the questionnaire which explored on the exposure of these children to media or the kind of family setup? So generally speaking, a very big setup or a joint family kind of a setup where there are too many people around can improve their verbal skills, can improve their eye-to-eye contact. So there will be some coloring because of a nuclear setup. Both parents in this pandemic, working parents work from home, they are glued to their laptop. So the child is getting exposed to a phone or something like that, is very passive, doesn't have any other child to mingle with. So were there any elements in this questionnaire which explored the differences or the kind of setup that the child is on or the exposure to media in this setup?
Yes, ma'am, there was a problem actually. I have used only CARS to assess the severity of autism. But while interviewing, almost all children have the habit of using this mobile phone invariably of this COVID period. It has become a custom. Like feeding a child without a mobile is really hard for any mother nowadays. So there is a problem, but other issues like not only the social reciprocity, the social communication also matters in autism. So that all these findings has helped me to pick up those children. And generally, as it has become a common thing, I don't make it as a different setup, like particularly in this COVID.
It's because a lot of parents, they search online and generally male children will have some amount of verbal delay, may not maintain eye-to-eye contact
Yeah,
so
yeah.
well as female children. So
Yeah.
what will happen is the parents will Google and say, I become very overtly anxious, is my child autistic or do I have to do something else? So on the other end of the spectrum, there is so much of anxiety associated with the parenting also. So, to arrive at the right diagnosis of autism when it is required and not to misdiagnose autism is also very equally important. So, it's a very nice study that you have brought out in this regard. So, maybe if you can try and explore these elements into it, especially in this pandemic where there is so much of social restriction and excessive viewing gadgets and all of that, it would bring in a different perspective to your study. So, best wishes and regards.
Thank you so much.
The next free paper presentation would be from Dr. Sayani Samantha. So she'll be speaking about level of satisfaction on quality of nursing care among patients admitted in super specialty tertiary care hospital in South India. Over to you.
Sayani ma'am, can you hear me ma'am? Sayani ma'am? Ma'am, your microphone is mute ma'am. Please unmute yourself. Can we go to Subodhya ma'am? Yeah. Subodhya ma'am, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes ma'am. Ma'am, you can presenting now ma'am.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The next presenter would be Dr. Subodhya. So she'll be presenting a comparative study of disability score in patients with schizophrenia and bipolar affective disorder using Indian Disability Evaluation and Assessment Scale, IDEAS. Over to you.
Ma'am, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes ma'am, very well.
You're audible. Yeah, please go
Good
ahead.
morning. So my study topic is comparative study of disability score in patient with schizophrenia and bipolar affective disorder using IDEAS, Indian Disability Evaluation and Assessment Scale. This is the cross-sectional study. The introduction, the psychiatric disorder cause disability in individual and pose significant burden on their families. The chronic mental illness patient have residual disability and poor quality of life. This disability persists despite the absence of psychotic or mood symptoms. The IDEAS is a recommended tool for measuring and quantifying disability in mental disorder. The items included in IDEAS are self-care, interpersonal activities, communication and understanding and work, along with the measure on duration of mental illness. So what was my aim and objectives of this study was to assess the disability score in patients with major mental illness, schizophrenia and bipolar of 5-year duration using the IDEAS tool and to compare the disability score among the two groups. So this study was conducted in Institute of Mental Health, Chennai. The study duration was 1 month. We included the patient of 30 patients of schizophrenia and 30 patients of bipolar, and those who reported to the review OPD during follow-up were examined, and 20 to 60 age group patients were included with minimum duration of 5 years illness with no psychotic or no mood symptoms. The exclusion criteria, the patient with diagnosis of substance-induced mood disorder and intellectual disability were not included. The instruments, the IDEA scale was used. The patients with minimum 5-year illness were interviewed along with the family member and assessed for disability as per guidelines to two consecutive evaluations was done. 15 days apart were done. So age distribution, we took the study sample with almost showing similarities with under two different age categories, 20 to 40 years and 40 to 60 years. There was no significance seen between age distribution and diagnosis. And this was a sex distribution. Female preponderance was more seen in the bipolar affective disorder, and male preponderance was seen more in the schizophrenia. And there was a statistical association was found between patient sex and diagnosis. And marital status distribution, most of them were married, and there was no significance was found between patient marital status and diagnosis. And the employment status distribution, almost both groups were similar, both employed and unemployed, and there was no significance was found between patients' employment status and diagnosis. And all of the 60 patients was from Chennai. And duration of illness, we categorize them into more than 5 years and more than 10 years and more than 15 years. And with mild and moderate, that is more than 5 and more than 10 years, was more found in bipolar affective disorder, and more than 15 years duration of illness was found more than in schizophrenia. And there was no statistical significance was found between duration of illness and diagnosis. And total disability score, was calculated by from 4 items, and we categorized them into 1 to 4 and 4 to 8 scores, and which was found more in bipolar, and 8 to 12 group score was found more in schizophrenia. And statistical significance was found between total disability score and patient diagnosis, and p-value was found to be significant. And total disability score 2, this was assessed 15 days apart at separate time, and during that time also we found the similar result. The score 1 to 4 and 4 to 8 was higher in bipolar, and score 8 to 12 was higher in schizophrenia. And statistical association was found between total disability score 2 and patient's diagnosis. And this was the total score of IDEAS 1 and 2, showing almost a similar result. This chart shows the representation of global disability 1 and diagnosis. The global disability is a total disability score plus duration of illness equals global disability. So this was the first global disability 1. The IDEA score assessment at first visit revealed a mild and moderate disability was statistically significant in bipolar, and severe disability was statistically significant in schizophrenia. And this chart shows the global disability 2 and diagnosis. IDEA score assessment at second visit showed mild and moderate disability was statistically significant in bipolar, and severe disability was statistically significant in schizophrenia. And this was the global disability and diagnosis. This was the average of global disability 1 and 2, and we are comparing with the diagnosis, and we found that to be significant association. So these were my result. Under 20 to 40 years, around 50% of bipolar falls under the age group of 20 to 40 years, followed by schizophrenia. In this study, 47.3% comes under 40 to 60 years, followed by schizophrenia. 52.6 of age group falls under 40 to 60 years of illness. And under 20 to 40 years, the 12.1% have mild disability, 63.4% have moderate disability. Under 40 to 60 years age group, the 78.9% have moderate disability and 63.1% have severe disability. The marital status, around 56.6% were married, and 20% were separated, and 21% were single. Sex, there is a female preponderance among bipolar in this study, and male preponderance among schizophrenia in this study. Employment status, almost similar results were found. 51% were employed and 48% were unemployed. So duration of illness, around 41% have more than 5 years of duration of illness, 23 have more than 10 years of illness, 35% have more than 15 years of illness. In the study, duration of illness, more than 5 years and more than 10 years, the bipolar was found more than in schizophrenia. More than 15 years, the schizophrenia was found more than in bipolar. So this was the total disability score. At first visit showed score up to 8, the bipolar was found more than schizophrenia, and 8 to 12 score was found more in schizophrenia. The second score also revealed the same. The global disability, mild and moderate, was found more in bipolar, and severe was found more in schizophrenia. Um, so discussion, no significant association was found between patient diagnosis and patient age, employment, marital status, and duration of illness. And no significant association was found between disability score and patient age, sex, marital status, and employment status. There was a statistical significant association was found between patient age and diagnosis, and significant association was found between global disability 1 and patient diagnosis. The significant association was found between global disability 2 and patient diagnosis. There was no statistical significant difference was found between two serial disability scores for both bipolar and schizophrenia. The significant association was found between total disability score 1 and 2 and patient diagnosis, and significant association was found between global disability and patient diagnosis. So how to conclude? As the awareness of mental disability benefits are increasing, the number of patients seeking it also increases. As the duration of illness also increases, the bipolar patient also tend to have more disability. Both bipolar and schizophrenia are chronic mental illness who attain partial to complete recovery. So what were my limitations of the studies? This study was done in the tertiary hospital in shorter duration with a small sample size. The relatively lower number of patients limit the generalizability of the results. The study centers caters predominantly to the urban area. These were my references, and thank you.
A nice presentation, Dr. Subodhya. So, it's very nice that you try to compare the disability and the differences between two major psychiatric illness, that is bipolar affective disorder and schizophrenia. So generally we are always, used to understand and learn schizophrenia is a more disabling condition, a chronic condition, and all of that. But the right kind of understanding now evolves to, give us the input that even bipolar can be as disabling as schizophrenia. And also we need to appreciate that the diagnosis can also change with time. So somebody who's diagnosed with a preliminary episode of a bipolar depression or something like that, longitudinally may turn out to be a schizophrenia or a chronic psychotic disorder. So the cognitive domain is one domain which significantly influences the disability in spite of the treatment armamentarium and all that. So my question is, were there any elements in the questionnaire, or I know you have applied ideas, but did you try to correlate it between any kind of drug use or something like that between treated and untreated patients? Because I think in a tertiary setting, all of them would have got some kind of a treatment. But how far the treatment helps in reducing the disability or anything like that? Have the questionnaire or the study explored?
We took patient with no active psychotic or mood symptoms, ma'am. They were all
Okay.
under. They were all patients of regular follow-up, ma'am.
Follow-up, okay.
And,
Okay. So, I understand that because you have done it in a hospital setting. So, even among people who have got their treatment, the disability is so high, like mild to moderate in bipolar and severe disabilities in schizophrenia. So, by and large, significant amount of the population is also untreated. So, the disability and the kind of, the impairment will be more even, it will be even more for such a population when you consider the overall general population and try to extrapolate. I think it's a nice study where you have brought out a comparative difference and nice insights on how disabling even mood disorders can be. So good job. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
The next presenter will be Dr. Sayani Samantha. So she will be presenting on the level of satisfaction on quality of nursing care among patients admitted in super specialty tertiary care hospital in South India. Over to you.
Good morning, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the screen is visible, ma'am.
Pardon?
Ma'am, the screen is visible.
You are visible. The
Ma'am,
screen is not yet visible. I think it will
ma'am, you
be
can
made
share your
visible.
screen, ma'am. Ma'am, please share your screen,
Few
ma'am.
minutes.
Below the Zoom link, you can see that share screen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now is this
Yeah,
visible?
Yeah,
yes,
it is
ma'am.
visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay,
please go ahead. Yeah.
okay. Today I'm going to present my MSc research, that is level of satisfaction on quality of nursing care among patients admitted in the super specialty medical wards of a tertiary care hospital, Southern India, under the guidance of Dr. Padmavati Nagarajan and Dr. K.T. Harichandra Kumar. So as we know that if we define the patient satisfaction, so that is the perception of the patients means they are receiving the care with the expectation of the care they want to receive. So patient satisfaction is a efficient indicator of the quality and the efficiency of the healthcare system. And if we see the WHO and also the ICN, they already state that our overall goal is to give the highest possible health care for all the people, and to provide that highest possible care, we have to maintain the quality of care also. And here the patient satisfaction has an important role. And as we know that nurses are there for 24 hours with the patient, so the quality of nursing care has an impact on the outcome of the patient's health. So it is also shown in other studies that good communication between the patient and the healthcare providers is also essential for patient satisfaction. The objective of the study is to assess the level of patient satisfaction regarding the nursing care among patients admitted in the super specialty medical wards of a tertiary care hospital, and also to identify the clinical and socio-demographic characteristics associated with the patient satisfaction. So in the methodology, it is a cross-sectional descriptive design, and the population was the patients admitted at super specialty block of a tertiary care hospital. The settings is the medical wards of the super specialty block, that includes the general medicine ward, immunology ward, nephrology ward, the neuromedicine ward, and endocrine ward. And the sample size is 182, and a stratified sampling technique has been used. The data collection tool was a standardized tool, that is the patient satisfaction with nursing care quality questionnaire, and also the socio-demographic proforma and clinical profile is been used. So in the inclusion criteria, there are patients with both gender and age more than 18 years, the patients who are fully conscious, and the duration of stay minimum 3 days. And the exclusion criteria includes patients who are acutely ill and with some known psychiatric illness. So in the data collection, first the approval has been taken from the Nursing Research Monitoring Committee and the Institution Ethical Committee. Then the permission was also obtained from the officer in charge of super specialty block. Then the written consent was taken from the eligible and willing participants, and the data has been collected when the patients were getting ready for discharge and or on the day of discharge. So if we see the results, here most of the participants are male participants. Most of them were having the primary level of education, and they are having a unskilled occupation, and most of them were from the rural community. If we see the clinical characteristics, so most of them were getting the medicinal treatment, and if in the last 2 years, most of them were having a one time of hospitalization experience, and on the basis of nursing care, most of the participants were strongly agree to recommend the hospital. And this is the questionnaire where the each item response is been there, means frequency distribution has been done. So here we can see means for the few items of the questionnaire, the participants have given a fair level of satisfaction, and for the others, most of the participants were having very good level of satisfaction. So for the fair level of satisfaction, the items are there. That is the information given by the nurses, the instructions provided to the patient by the nurses regarding the tests and other healthcare facilities, the attention of the nurses to patient's opinion, and the ability to make the patient comfortable, the response to patient's calls, the skill and competence of the nurses, the privacy provided by the nurses, and the discharge instructions provided to the patient by the nurses, and the overall quality of nursing care. Whereas there are the very good satisfaction level was seen in the other items, such as willingness of the nurses to answer the questions, the communication skills of the nurses, the informing to the family members regarding the patient health status, involving the family members in patient care, the concern and caring by the nurses, and the recognition of the patient's opinion, the consideration of the patient's need, the adjustment according to the patient's need, and the coordination of care with the other healthcare team members, the restful atmosphere provided by the nurses' efforts to provide for patients' needs after they left the hospital, the overall quality of care, and in general health condition of the patient. So if we see the association of patient satisfaction with other characteristics here, we can find that domicile and the ward name, these are having a statistical significance less than 0.05. And here we can see for the participants from the rural community, they are having the more satisfaction rate, and the participants from the immunology ward, they are having the greater level of satisfaction, whereas the cardiology and gastromedicine ward participants also having a more level of satisfaction. So, in summary, we can say that we have analyzed that the average satisfaction score was about 49.3%, and there is a significant association of patient satisfaction with domicile and type of ward. So, and we have already seen that the participants are strongly agree to recommend this hospital to the other friends and relatives. So, this can be because there is less expense in the healthcare facility, and also availability of the all advanced healthcare facilities. So it can be a recommendation that further studies can be carried out to find out the exact reason, and also a similar study can be carried out in other inpatient areas of the hospital, and it can be a comparative study also can be done between the government and private hospitals, and a similar study can be done on patient satisfaction by overall care provided by the various department of the hospital. And these are the references. Thank you, ma'am.
It's a nice presentation, Dr. Saini Samantha. I think, it's very important to understand the patient's perspective, that is their level of satisfaction, to improvise on the quality of service delivery. And I would like to just understand, I understand the rural population has a better satisfaction score as compared with the urban population. Maybe the expectation levels are different, or the way they look at the medical care system or nurses or doctors as service providers, it's very different from how they approach doctors or nurses in a proper urban setting, where they are just looked upon as somebody who should do their job for the for the kind of service that they are meant to. So I would just like to understand from you, like, were there any elements which explored why were the patients dissatisfied? I understand almost half of the population is going satisfied and half is not. That's what your conclusion says, around 49%.
3%.
Yeah, so they are satisfied. So did you look into the the population or the patients who are not satisfied, because that is the area we are more keen into, and we can probably improvise on those lapses or whatever that makes them dissatisfied in the service delivery. So were there anything in your study which explored that area?
Actually, ma'am, in my questionnaire, there was one comment section, means what the patient wants to improve in the nursing care.
Okay.
Because so actually, ma'am, that was not that much significant reasons I couldn't find out. So that
Okay, but
portion
you would know what are the common reasons, no? Because 50% is a huge number. I think we should say 50% is not satisfied in spite of our best efforts, rather than saying 50% is satisfied. Because, I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
the unaddressed or the unsatisfied population is where we can actually work on. So we can't be
yes,
happy
ma'am.
that 1 in 2 is going happy back home. So 1 in 2 is not going happy back. So we need to really understand like
Actually,
what is
ma'am,
the difference.
Actually, ma'am, most of the patients were saying that as it is a government setup, so the waiting time was more. Means
Yes,
means facilities are available, but still to get the facilities they have to they have to wait for a long period of time.
right.
So these were the common causes.
Common
Means that
causes.
I have find out in my study, but that was means most of the participants were not willing to come in because
Okay,
there was a means they used to think like that, means they are under the treatment in this hospital,
I
and if
understand.
they are commenting against the system, so there might
Yes.
be some
The
differences
anonymity
in the
was not maintained in this study, right?
what,
The
ma'am?
patients were not anonymous. They wrote their names. I mean, it was very
No, ma'am,
evident.
no, ma'am, no, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. Anonymity was maintained because
Okay,
only I have used the numbering, not the patient name.
okay,
In the questionnaire also I have used the numbers only, not the
okay,
patient name.
okay.
But ma'am, the hospital ID was there. Means actually for my study purpose, means to
But
identity,
I
it
mean,
was
did you
easy for
deliver
me to
the
identify.
study personally, or I mean, the treating doctors or the treating nurses asked them to fill this form and say whether they are satisfied or
No,
not?
I have no, ma'am. I have given
You had
the
done it.
questionnaire to the patients. They
Good.
only filled up the form.
Okay, okay. Because generally, no, on the day of discharge, you go and give them. I mean, it happens in a corporate setting also. So suddenly you creep in and say, like, I mean, are you satisfied, not satisfied? They'll get a little apprehensive. I mean, what they'll write in the discharge summary, or we should come back to the same
Yes,
doctor
yes.
or nurse in future. So how can we even comment bad about them? So I think anonymity is a very important thing that you have carefully looked into in this study. And I think you can continue the study, or I mean, try to do some work on the population, the 50% which was not satisfied, because that would mean a lot to the management or to the system to just identify lapses in the system delivery. Because overall, whatever we do, no, if the patient satisfaction is not great, it is not going to really reflect on the kind of drug complaints or follow up. They may drop out, not report on time, and all that. So if it is waiting time, or if it is whatever, I mean, overcrowding, or whatever it is, I mean, if you bring it in a methodological way and report it to your management or to your institution, it will be an eye opener for them to implement some systemic changes or some corrections in the system, thereby ensuring a better patient care. I think it's a very nice study that you have brought about. All the best. Best wishes.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
I think with this presentation, we are coming to the end of this session on free papers. Overall, all the presenters did a very good, commendable job. So on various aspects, I mean, there were no repetition in the topics or anything like that. So it was very insightful, and it was, very nice to chair such storming discussion. I thank the management and the organizers once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.